Thank you, Your Honor. We are present in the state of Ohio versus Dennis Welk in case number 25 CR 206. The defendant is in.
This is one of those cases that doesn't just shock you. It raises serious questions about trust, accountability, and what real remorse actually looks like. We're in Ohio, where Dennis Welk has already pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual battery involving his own stepdaughter. So today, this isn't about whether he did it. It's about what happens next. But here's where things get complicated. The defense paints a picture of regret, alcohol-fueled poor judgment, and a man who made a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, the prosecution is about to reveal something much darker. Allegations of manipulation, continued contact with the victim, and behavior that didn't stop even after arrest. So the question is, can someone claim remorse while still causing harm behind the scenes? And when both sides agree on a sentence, will the judge accept it or completely reject it? Stay with me, because by the end of this hearing, everything changes.
So we were last here on May 14th, where the defendant pled guilty to count 5 and count 6, both being sexual battery felonies of the 3rd degree. At that time, the court referred the defendant for a pre-sentence report and victim impact statement. Those reports have been completed, and the state is prepared to proceed with sentencing.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. I'm going to be brief. This was a heinous crime, Judge. This was horrible in a lot of ways. But most importantly, because this was a minor child who almost assuredly didn't fully understand what was going on with somebody whom was entrusted to love her and to protect her. However, Your Honor, this is not indicative of who Mr. Welk is as a person. Yes, he has a record. Yes, he has been to prison. But it's mainly in the past been for drug offenses, I believe some theft offenses, nothing of this magnitude. On this day, and this is not an excuse, Judge, for his behavior, but on this day, Mr. Welk was drinking a lot, was highly intoxicated, and took advantage of his stepdaughter. Since the day I met him, he is in disbelief that he did this. He has expressed to me his remorse and his sadness and how he hurt her, how he hurt his wife, how he hurt the rest of his family. He knows, Your Honor, that he's going to be spending a lot of time in jail coming up. I know there's discretion with the plea with how much time that equates to. This court has a lot of discretion with that. Earlier in chambers, the state and I presented to the court a joint recommendation for 8 years. I'm going to respectfully ask the court to consider imposing that sentence because I believe Mr. Welk is remorseful. I believe that this is not who he is as a person, and I'm hoping when his time is up and he gets out, which, by the way, he's going to be reporting as a sex offender for the rest of his life, so he's going to be under a microscope. He's going to be monitored for the rest of his life. But I'm hoping that he'll be able to piece things together, make amends with at least part of his family. I don't know if he can ever make full amends with everybody or not. And you're going to hear from him in just a minute, Your Honor. But again, I don't think this is who he is as a person. And I'm going to respectfully ask the court to consider adopting the joint recommendation. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. You are required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a residency within 3 days of coming into that county, or if temporarily domiciled for more than 3 days. You are also required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a place of education immediately upon coming into that county. If you establish a place of education in another state but maintain a residence or temporary domicile here, you are also required to register in person with the sheriff or other appropriate official in that other state immediately upon coming into that state. Failure to register, failure to verify residence at the specified times, or failure to provide notice of change in residence address or other required information as described above will result in a criminal prosecution. Mr. Watson, if you would present this to Mr. Welk for his acknowledgement and signature. All right, Mr. Welk, what do you want to tell me before I impose sentence?
First and foremost, I'd like to apologize to the courts for appearing before them today. I'd like to apologize to the victim in this case. I'm not going to use alcohol or drugs as an excuse for anything. However, alcohol was a main factor in this case. But I take full responsibility.
Right from the start, this case is already in a critical phase. The defendant has pleaded guilty. That shifts everything. There's no trial, no debate over evidence, just sentencing. And in cases involving minors, especially within a family, the stakes are incredibly high. The court isn't just looking at the crime itself. It's looking at the breach of trust, the long-term impact on the victim, and the risk the defendant poses moving forward. Add in a pre-sentence report and victim impact statement, and the judge now has a full picture, not just of what happened, but who this person is and how deeply this crime affected the victim. So at this point, the real question becomes, how much punishment is enough? So the question is, can someone claim remorse while still causing harm behind the scenes? And when both sides agree on a sentence, will the judge accept it or completely reject it? Stay with me, because by the end of this hearing, everything changes.
However, alcohol was a main factor in this case. But I take full responsibility for my actions because I chose to make the irresponsible decision consuming too much alcohol than I could handle, causing poor, regretful choices leading to my incarceration. I've read the police reports and feel ashamed, embarrassed, and hurt because that's not the person I am. And I wouldn't be standing here today if I would have just been more responsible. I have 4 younger children that I've let down because of being locked away from them, missing out on watching them grow. Having to deal with that is a heartache alone. The only thing I can do now is work on myself while incarcerated, take advantage of all programs they offer, and become a better man and a better father, and not give up doing so. I have to make this my last time in jail, and I plan to. I'm sincerely remorseful to my victim in this case, letting her down when I was supposed to be a father figure in her life. I beat myself up over this every day. Over this, wishing I could take it all back. I just hope she can grow up in life and leave this in the past, and that it doesn't affect her future. Again, I'm sorry to everyone I caused pain to in this case.
Ms. Alessi?
Thank you, Your Honor. One thing that the defendant said today in court, and even in his pre-sentence report that stood out to me, is that he was supposed to be a loving and caring father. And I couldn't agree more with that. He should have been someone that the victim could trust and rely on for protection and guidance. And
Right from the start, this case is already in a critical phase. The defendant has pleaded guilty. That shifts everything. There's no trial, no debate over evidence, just sentencing. And in cases involving minors, especially within a family, the stakes are incredibly high. The court isn't just looking at the crime itself. It's looking at the breach of trust, the long-term impact on the victim, and the risk the defendant poses moving forward. Add in a pre-sentence report and victim impact statement, and the judge now has a full picture, not just of what happened, but who this person is and how deeply this crime affected the victim. So at this point, the real question becomes, how much punishment is enough? Now, listen closely to the defense strategy. They openly admit this was a heinous act, but then quickly pivot. The focus shifts to who the defendant really is, someone they claim is not defined by this moment. They bring up his past, his struggles, even alcohol as a factor that influenced his behavior. But here's the problem. When the victim is a minor, especially a stepchild, courts don't just see a bad decision. They see a complete violation of responsibility. And while alcohol is mentioned legally, it doesn't excuse actions like this. In many cases, it actually makes things worse by showing reckless behavior. So while the defense is trying to humanize him, the court may be seeing something very different.
He attempted to guilt and manipulate her by blaming her for her own suicide attempt at the East Lake Jail. He pressured her to express her feelings to law enforcement about her desire for him to only receive a short sentence. He spoke of wanting to attend counseling together. He emphasized they were a team and told her he loved her, despite being her abuser, despite doing what he did here. And during several of these recorded calls, you can hear the victim crying, further illustrating just the ongoing emotional harm caused by the defendant and his conduct. This behavior demonstrates his continued disregard for the well-being of the victim, his family, and his ongoing efforts to control her and manipulate her. The defendant today in court said he's remorseful, but in the pre-sentence report, he didn't believe he did anything wrong, and he wants to take this to trial. So I'm not sure what this court can believe. He has a lengthy criminal history, including 4 prior prison numbers and 5 felony cases. And all of this, I think, supports the need for a significant term of incarceration and respectfully asks this court to impose a jointly agreed sentence of 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Why did you call her after you were in jail?
Because I was told by the detective I was allowed to.
Okay.
I didn't call her. I called my wife and she answered the phone.
All right. And what contact did you have with her about retracting her statement or modifying her statement?
It wasn't retracting. We talked about counseling, going to counseling and stuff, because that was something that they was talking about making them do, and something she said she didn't want to do.
Well, trying to, whether directly contacting her or contacting her through your wife, was wholly inappropriate. And it was further evidence of you trying to take advantage of her at that young age, like you did when this happened.
Now, she had asked the detective if she could have contact with me when this case was all started. Then when I went to my preliminary hearing on February 11th, I asked the detective and he told me the same thing.
All right. Well, you're experienced enough in the system to have the wisdom that you shouldn't have been contacting her. Okay. In talking to her, having about anything having to do with this case. So, you've in your statement, you say you apologize to her, but then in the pre-sentence report, you talk about how you don't believe you did everything you're accused of doing and wanted to take this to trial. What's that all about?
I don't remember exactly what I said, Your Honor, but what I was saying was I don't have recollection of what happened the night of, so I wasn't admitting to, I don't know what happened.
So did you or didn't you do this stuff?
Yes.
Okay. And I got to tell you, it doesn't get much worse than this kind of stuff.
I understand.
And I would note in the record that in 2009 or 2010.
Now, the defendant speaks, and this is always a defining moment. He apologizes, takes responsibility, expresses shame, and talks about wanting to change. On the surface, it sounds like remorse. But here's where things start to unravel. Because what's said in court has to match everything else, especially the pre-sentence report and prior statements. And when the prosecution steps in, they expose a major contradiction. While claiming remorse, the defendant allegedly continued contacting the victim from jail, pressuring her, manipulating her, and trying to influence the situation. That changes everything. Because true remorse isn't just words, it's behavior. And if those actions don't line up, the entire defense argument starts to fall apart.
Last prison sentence and where you are today, so. You've had a lifetime of criminal activity, but none worse than what has occurred here. So I've reviewed the pre-sentence report and a victim impact statement. I've considered what you have said, what counsel has said, and I've also considered that they've made a joint recommendation of 96 months in prison.